And one of the girls on the wait list, we got sent a picture of her with her after having been shot in the head and bleeding out on the pavement. And this girl was probably about 14 days from coming into the program and living in a life of freedom. She was being trafficked by a gang down there in Guatemala. They knew that she was planning on leaving that life and coming into this program. And so what they did is they killed her. And they sent the picture to us as a message about what happens when you try to interfere with their business.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. This is the first episode for Game of Crimes in 2025. And you might recognize the young man sitting here with me because he's been a guest on the show before. We're bringing back Tyler Schwab. If you remember, let's see, I believe it was episode 154. We had you on here, Tyler, and it was published in July 2022. He is the founder and CEO of Libertas International, which is the anti-human trafficking organization that primarily works out of Medellin, Colombia. If you saw that episode, if you didn't see it, go back and watch it. I mean, let me tell you, bring some tissues if you haven't seen it, because you'll see I had to stop recording there for a while because these stories just break your heart. And if you go listen to that first episode, you'll know the story that we're talking about when you hear it. I mean, was it a 9-month-old girl?
19-month-old.
19-month-old. Yeah, I mean, just heartbreaking. So, but during Tyler's first interview, we discussed about having him back at the 6-month mark to get an update on how things are going down there. They're I guess you're into your 11th year now. Been going over 10 years. And along the way, Tyler sends me emails with updates. And I tell you what, I've got some of them printed out here on this other screen, Tyler. When I read his emails, I want to jump up and go, yeah, they got the son of a bitch. So if you don't feel like that, you probably shouldn't listen to this episode. Because we're talking about the worst of the worst in our world, the people who will take advantage of other human beings, especially children, for their own perverted, sexual, deviant behavior. If you're one of those people, screw you. You don't need to be in my world. You don't need to be in Tyler's world. So, go to jail. Go right in jail. I don't have any sympathy for you. Of course, I don't speak my mind very often. So.
I love it.
And if you remember also, because of what he does and where he has his office in Medellin, Colombia, those of you that know me know that my 2 daughters, we adopted them. Connie and I adopted them in Colombia. The youngest one, Mandy, who's now 30 years old, she's from Medellin. We got her when she was 5 months old. So this kind of has a soft spot in my heart. First of all, because it's human trafficking. Second of all, because it's child exploitation. Third, because it's located in a city that I have a lot of love for. I spent a lot of my life facing down demons there in Medellin, and I'll always love the country of Colombia. So that's why I'm making a big deal out of this whole thing here. Let me see if I touched on everything. We're going to get into what Libertas Freedom is and Libertas International here. I'll let Tyler explain that. Tyler, I just want to welcome you back to the show, man. I'm so excited to have you here.
Well, I'm happy to be back. I'm happy to be. I always feel honored that you have me on because I'm a consistent listener to the Game of Crimes podcast, and every single week, the people you have on your podcast, people that have survived helicopter crashes and assassination attempts, and I only got halfway through that one where I think it was like a couple weeks ago where that guy he's still actively being threatened by these drug cartels.
Yeah,
and I was like, oh my gosh, yes, yeah. So I'm just always feel honored to be included. That your audience, who I can only imagine are the brave men and women that have served our country, or activists as well, or interested in what you've done, that they put up with me, like a non-law enforcement person, speaking on my experience on the podcast. I just feel so honored and so lucky to be on the Games of Crime podcast.
Let me tell you, everybody in that hero category, which you belong in, by the way, but when you're talking about our law enforcement and military heroes that are out there, every one of them would go to battle with you to support you, what you're doing. Every single one of them. There's no question in my mind. I actually went last night up to the north side of Orlando to be interviewed on a podcast called the Anti-Hero podcast, which I think will come out in a couple of weeks. The 2 guys there, one is an Orange County deputy sheriff here, which is Orange County is where Orlando's located in Florida. And the other is a former Delta operator for the U.S. Army. And that gentleman, one of his other jobs is he participates in rescuing victims of human trafficking. and he happens to have spent time in Colombia. I said, well, let me ask you, have you ever heard of Libertas International? He said, oh, yeah, we're very familiar with them. So I don't know that, and I'm not going to mention his name on here because I don't have his permission, but I don't know that you guys ever met. I mentioned your name to him privately, and he didn't recognize it, but he knew your organization.
Wow, that's cool.
So, I mean, the word's out there, man. And it just shows you we had Seth Griffith on here, with his wife, what was 6 months ago, 5 months ago, something like that. And he's involved in, not full time, but some of the things that he does involves rescuing victims. So there's just studs out there. And I tell you what, as long as Game of Crimes is going to go, I'm going to support every effort there is, legitimate efforts. I'm not looking at profit-making efforts, people that are trying to glorify themselves. But, you're running a nonprofit. I've been able, good Lord has blessed me with a few bucks that I can throw your way, and will continue to do so. And for our listeners, you're going to hear me talk about this a couple of times today, but I'm going to hit you up for some money to go to Libertas International. Trust me, it is a worthy organization. The money is not being squandered. You can see how well Tyler dressed up for our episode today because he's got, Fifth Avenue clothing. But he still looks better than me in my free shirts. No, I think I bought it, or Connie bought me this one.
Yeah, you look better.
Yeah. Thank you, man. See, I pay him. That's why he says good things about me.
Yeah, the Venmo hit the account.
But like we do every episode, we have our small town police blotter. And before we get into that, let me just give you the disclaimer. This is a show about crime. We talk about bad people doing bad things. We talk about bad people doing bad things to good people. I do take these stories very seriously, but it never hurts to have a little laugh. And what's wrong with having a little chuckle about some of the crazy and stupid things that our criminals do, right? So as we always do, our guest is going to read one. Tyler's from Wyoming, so we found an article about a person in Wyoming. And, me, I'm in Florida, and there's no shortage of stories from Florida, and I've got another one for you today. So, Tyler, if you would, brother, take it away.
Yeah, well, small town police blotter. A Wyoming man arranged to pay a prostitute with a McDonald's quarter pound and French fries was arrested when he showed up for the illicit encounter, food in hand, only to discover that he had been snared in a police sting. Part of an undercover operation, cops in Casper placed a Backpage.com ad in the guise of a prostitute trolling for her clients. Investigators charged that David Mangus, 22, answered the ad and arranged to meet up with the woman for sex. But instead of paying cash for sex, cops say Mangus worked out a deal to provide the woman with the food instead, specifically a McDonald's quarter pounder with cheese and a medium-sized order of French fries. Mangus was arrested when he arrived to meet the woman. He was carrying the bag of McDonald's grub when undercover officers took him into custody. Mangus was charged with soliciting prostitution, a misdemeanor, and he was booked into the Natrona County Jail and later released.
Talk about a big spender.
Quarter pounder of cheese, and not even like a large, like a medium. You couldn't at least like splurge for the large on that?
Well, I'm surprised it wasn't a Happy Meal.
In that case, like a question on that one, when they show up and they're arrested, do the cops get to take that quarter pounder of cheese, or is it going to like some kind of evidence, or what is kind of like the parameters around this McDonald's quarter pounder with cheese?
Legally, it's evidence. What'll happen is they'll take pictures of it because it's not going, it's going to rot by the time it goes to court. So, and it's going to get trashed because nobody wants to touch anything that pervert has touched.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. I didn't think about that. Oh god.
That's funny though. When I was a city cop back in the 70s in southern West Virginia, at nighttime when the McDonald's, we only had one McDonald's back then, when it would close, they would call the station. They called dispatch. And the beat car would go down there, and whatever food they had left over, they'd pile it into a bunch of bags and give it to us. And, you never knew what you're going to get. And you just kind of hope the people there didn't do anything to it. And then we'd also escort them to the bank for their nightly deposits and things like that.
Yeah.
So, but it's very nice of them to do that. They don't have to do that.
Yeah, no shame of a free meal.
Yeah, everybody likes McDonald's. They got the best fries of anybody.
Yeah. Oh, and they're like fountain drinks. Like there's no better Coke fountain drink that comes from McDonald's. Like
that's what Connie says.
Yeah, and she's right. I think she's right.
Most of what she said. She's not in here, is she? She's not in. Safe. All right. Thank you, Tyler. So from Florida, what we got here today is, I love this because I remember hearing about it, and this is a little bit of a follow-up. So this is December of this year, just a couple of weeks ago, the 72-year-old retiree who fired his 9mm handgun to shoot down a Walmart delivery drone hovering near his Florida home and struck a plea deal that could result in the eventual dismissal of felony and misdemeanor counts, according to court records. Dennis Wynn will enter a pretrial intervention program offered by prosecutors that, upon successful completion, will result in the dropping of criminal charges. The program, which is similar to probation, is offered to defendants with no significant criminal history. In this contract signed by Wynn and prosecutors, the defendant admitted his guilt and agreed to perform 25 hours of community service, so that's a nice thing. At the conclusion of the program, which could be as short as 90 days, the state will not object to the return of defendant's firearm and evidence. So that's nice, too. Now, if you remember, it was back in during November 27th, during a court conference, Wynn also was ordered to immediately pay $5,000 in restitution to a company called Drone Up Delivery. And that's the Virginia firm and Walmart partner that owned the drone that was struck by the single bullet fired from Wynn's Sig Sauer pistol. Let me tell you, that's some pretty good shooting. Back then, Wynn was charged with a criminal information with discharging a firearm in public, a misdemeanor, and criminal mischief, a third-degree felony. 6 damage to the drone's payload system exceeded $1,000. Now, just a little bit about Mr. Wynn. He's a former New Jersey fire captain. He was arrested in late June in his home in Claremont, which is one of the suburbs here on the north side of Orlando, after drone-up employees told cops that their drone was fired on while it flew over a residential area. This is kind of in tune with what's going on today up in the Northeast, with all the drones flying around. Everybody's wondering what's going on. So a 2-man drone-up team was in the neighborhood conducting mock deliveries to attract business and interest in the new Walmart program. The drone had been flying at a height of 230 feet before it dropped down to 75 feet to demonstrate the deployment of a cable to which a Walmart package would be attached. Wynn told investigators that he was working on his pool equipment when he heard the drone whirring in front of his house. After trying to shoo off the drone, how do you shoo off it? Shoo off a drone. That's like shooting. You're going to go pew, pew.
Yeah, no kidding.
He retrieved his firearm from a gun safe and fired. And now, quote, he says, "Now they say I hit it, so I must be a good shot," unquote. And that's according to the police body cam recording that they captured Wynn's confession, which, yes, I shot at it, and a query, how much trouble am I in? Claiming that he was unaware the drone was part of the Walmart fleet, Wynn explained that he had past experiences with drones flying over his house and believed they were surveilling him. He did not further explain why he thought this home was a quiet cul-de-sac purchased for about $500,000 in 2007 was the target of prior aerial monitoring. When the double-up workers heard gunfire and saw Wynn holding a handgun towards the sky, they ran. They ran back to their van. Probably pretty smart. While the drone returned to a Walmart supercenter about 4 miles away, or by air, as what we'd say is the crow flies, 2 miles. While Wynn, cops say, acknowledged the reckless nature of his actions, he made an odd comment while officers gently handcuffed him in front. This is kind of fun. He's saying, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe." And he's laughing about it. And, of course, the deputies couldn't have any reaction to that. So,
oh, man.
Mr. Wynn, you are one hell of a shot if you took a 9mm, 6 hours, a sweet gun. That's what I carried on duty with DEA when I retired. You hit it with a flying target with 1 round. That's damn good shooting. But we know we can't do that. We can't be shooting at the drones, right?
No, I imagine it's going to happen more often, though. I imagine as the world transitions to own deliveries and what's happening up in Northeast, this stuff is going to happen more often, right?
Well, I mean, you saw that what's going on now. You see them primarily in the Northeast and other parts like the Midwest and a few places. You don't see any of those being reported down here in the Southeast, do you?
No.
We know how to take care of those damn drones.
Yes, you do. Yes,
Mr. Wayne he's our poster boy.
That's right. Yeah, he's a hero down there. It's like, that's how you deal with a drone.
Okay. So again, everybody, we just want to have a little levity here to get things started because we're getting ready to talk about some really serious stuff. And honestly, I even contemplated not having this on here at all, but Tyler has such a good sense of humor, and let's just hope this lightens the mood because we're going to be going over some serious things here. Just to go back and refresh everybody's memory, Tyler, as he told you, is a regular listener to the Game of Crimes. He'd heard about human trafficking that we discussed here on the program before. And he sent me I think he sent me a LinkedIn and a couple other ways to try to get a hold of me. And after people I don't know, if you want to be on the show, I'll vet you. I'm telling you, I'll be real honest with you. I'll check you out. And if you don't check out, you're probably not going to hear from me. I've got law enforcement friends all around the world. And so I call them. I do my due diligence, let's say. But when I checked out Tyler, I thought, man, I got to find out more about this young guy. What in the world motivated him? Why did he get involved in this? What's his background? What led to all this? What are the dangers he's facing? And we're going to talk about that later in the show because it's unbelievable. And I told you, Game Crimes here takes this human trafficking very serious. And just as an example, in episode 60, which was in July of 22, we actually had a victim of human trafficking on here, Natasha Herzig. If you haven't heard her story, go back and listen. She was kidnapped. I think she was 19 years old in San Jose, California. It's heartbreaking to hear what she endured. But what's even more heartbreaking is during the interview, you can see how it has left a long-term effect on her, a negative long-term effect. But last I heard, she's doing very well. She has left the California area, lives down in that little state we call Texas Little. But Natasha, thank you so much again for coming on the show if you're hearing this. Then on episode 113, we had Ty Holland on here, who I believe was a retired Seattle cop, and then he worked for one organization in Utah. And I think he left that organization, went to another one. I'm not sure where he is now, but he told you about some of the efforts that they were employing to help victims and rescue victims. And then in episode 146, we had Heidi Chance, a retired Phoenix police officer who spent the majority of the end of her career working against human traffickers. And that episode came out in May of 24. And of course, we had Tyler on here in episode 154 back in July, right after that. This topic is not going away. I know you guys love to hear about organized crime and outlaw motorcycle gangs and all the studs and studettes that we bring on here. But this is a topic that's important to me. It should be important to all of us. Tyler's probably going to come back a third time, which we've never had a guest come back a third time. So I want to keep updating everything that he's doing to show you, especially if you're donating, what you're getting for your money. Because I promise you, it's all worthwhile. During the last interview, Tyler actually made a donation online so everybody could see how quickly it could be done. And I'll just go ahead and mention it right now. Libertas is Libertas International.org. .org. And I've got it pulled up here and I couldn't even tell you. But when you pull up their homepage, right in the top right corner, there's a blue button that says donate. It's that simple. And they've got preset amounts on there you can donate, or you can donate what you can afford. If you can afford $1 million, give them $1 million. If you can afford $10, $10 is good. I'm sure they won't turn down any donations. And I was fortunate enough to make another one here on Giving Tuesday. We put out on all our social media sites about Giving Tuesday and supporting Libertas International. So I hope you did. If you didn't, it'd be a great Christmas gift. And here's the cool thing: as I was talking to Tyler, he texted me, let me know he was back in the United States. He's back for a while now, and we'll tell you about that later. But I talked to him about coming on, and this is our first show in 2025. And Tyler, tell us what's the significance of January 2025 in your business?
Yeah, January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month across the different organizations that do anti-human trafficking. It's a lot of time, I think, that a lot of legislators get together and talk about things. It's a time where the activists in the industry try to get, the word out there of what's happening, some of the ongoing trends with the new administration coming in, ways to clean up what's going on, like around the country, around the world. And so as a movement, it's Human Trafficking Awareness Month of January. And so you see a bunch of nonprofits, like ours included, spreading awareness of what human trafficking looks like, what's our mission, what do we do, and then obviously like raising money and just I'll get us started. Like it's funny, like we talked about just how certain phrases like just they trigger certain memories for me. And you just mentioned one, like if someone has $1 million, great. LibertasInternational.org, make a donation. That would be an amazing way to help propel our work. But even a donation of $5, $10, you mentioned what people get for their money. And when they donate to Libertas, there's a story that I'll never forget because it taught me, I compared like the widow's mite, that she gave what she could and hoping that it would make an impact and how much she gave. I was at this event once. I was speaking at like a university setting, and there was this really old lady that came in, and she wanted to donate $7. That's what she had in her purse. She's like, I don't have my checkbook, I don't have my credit cards, and we're kind of going through a tough spot because my husband is going through chemotherapy, but I'm really inspired by your mission. I have $7. Like, is that okay? Like, can you do something with that? And obviously, like, you're just like, oh my gosh, like, thank you so much. Yes, it makes such an impact. I'm so grateful. Do you need a receipt? Like all these different things. Took the money, put it in my pocket, and just said thank you to this lovely old woman. And 2 days later, I was on a flight to Peru. We were working with the police. We were doing this case in Peru, in this place called Pucallpa, Peru, which is a really wild place in the jungle of Peru. It's right next to the Amazon River. And we go there, and we were there obviously providing survivor care. That's what we do. We help take care of these girls, and we go on site. They had just made all these arrests. There were these 4 traffickers in one corner of the room being taken to wherever they were getting taken to. And there was a group of 4 or 5 girls that had just been rescued. And so I go over with my social worker, go over there, sit down, and we just start talking. And there's this girl there. She's probably 13, 14 years old. And she was probably 8 months and 3 weeks pregnant, just about ready to burst. But her figure looked like she was dehydrated. She was not eating well. You can just tell. And so I sit down with her, and she's just kind of passing out. She's not really there. She's losing a lot of strength. And I was like, hey, are you okay? Can we do something for you? Can we get something for you? What's going on? She told us. She said that in preparation for whatever event was taking place today where I was going to be sold again, the traffickers, to make me look thinner, despite me being pregnant, have not given me food or water for 3 days. And I can feel my baby stop moving. Like I can feel it dying. And she was like, I need food. Can you give me some food? And in this place, it's not a place where like cards are like able to like be used. And I don't carry a ton of cash on me anyway. And Venmo is just not a thing in Peru. But I happen to be wearing the same pair of pants because I've been traveling. I hadn't changed clothes in 3 days. So it was really nasty. I was wearing the same pair of pants that I was wearing during that event. So I reached in my pocket and I was like, I have $7. Pulled out $7. So I ran out, and there's this card of like this old lady that had like this chicken, like this rotisserie chicken that was cooked over like a live fire. And I was like, how much is this? And she told me how much it was in Peruvian exchange. All I have is dollars. Is that okay? And she's like, yep, sounds great. Give me the whole chicken. Took in the whole chicken, gave it to her. And this girl ate this rotisserie chicken all by herself in probably 2.5 minutes, just devoured that thing. And for me, like someone that was providing that for her, it was a chance for me to be like, well, this is just for you. You don't have to do anything. You have to give me money. You don't have to do anything. It's a free gift for you as a welcome to your freedom. And it's a gift that we give without anything in return, which I think is how this woman who had donated would have wanted that to be, because she was very religious. She was telling me about her belief in God and grace and how it's a free gift and how that's how we know it's a good gift. And so I gave her the chicken. She ate it. And for me, in the process of her healing, it was a great start because it showed her I'm a safe person, and the things that we give her, the help that we give her, are free. No need to give us anything in return. And it met the most important need that she had at that time, was her own survival and the survival of that little baby that she had inside her stomach. And just $7. That's what it took for this girl in that moment to change her life and potentially the life of that little baby that was inside of her. It was just $7.
Well, that little lady, she saved a life. $7. I mean, holy cow. We spend more of that on a cup of coffee nowadays. It's ridiculous. And then what you did for that young lady, not only did you save her life and the baby's life, but you restored hope. Man, it's just, whoo. Yeah, I'm getting chill bumps already.
Yeah, it was and just that's $7. That's what it took to make the difference. And would like to think that when that woman, because like the whole story, like just how she was, I don't know, didn't keep in touch with her because she was a stranger. So I hope their husband's doing okay. But in that moment where she expressed her soul to me, where it's like, I want to give you all the money I have, but I can't because these things are happening in my life right now, but I have this to give you.
Right.
And she gave it to the nonprofit with the trust that we would do good with it. And as it came to pass, we were able to use it to buy a rotisserie chicken, and that is what changed this little girl's life in that moment, or at least gave her hope in that moment that she was going to be okay, her baby was going to be okay, and that she was truly free from what she'd experienced before.
Now, is Libertas following up on her care, or she's working with another organization?
Yeah, we followed up for a long time. This is a while back. She grew up. She's now living independently. She actually had another kid with her husband, and she just lives down there in the Amazon River. She works at like a local bakery, and she's just surviving and living a normal life. And I think it's like me specifically is, I think normal, when normal's taken away from a lot of us, me included, when we get into like our normal routine, I think we can sometimes get bored. And I just recently had an experience to where the beauty of normality is kind of coming back to me. I'll just hit you with stories. Yeah, if I could just keep going with this story, or do you want to interject real quick?
That's why we're here, is update.
Okay, good. So there's this amazing survivor that I've worked with for a long time. She's from Colombia, and she has two daughters. And one of the oldest daughters is named after my great grandma. And so I told her that when I first met, and we became really close because my great grandma was an amazing woman that helped raise my dad. And we just, as we were starting this whole process, I just got to know the family really well. And something happened to this girl in Colombia that forced her to leave her country. She was threatened by the traffickers that had once exploited her. And then her brother was murdered by a police officer. And the police officer then made a threat against her family, unfortunately. And with all that happening in Colombia, she just fled. She fled to the U.S. border, and did what we ask these people to do. Really, is like you wait your turn. Like you download the apps. Like you present your case so you can get legal asylum, so that you're here contributing versus like taking from the taxpayer, from all these different things. And she knew that if she wanted to be successful here, that she had to have the legal documents and then try her best to learn the language. And so she came to the Mexican, the U.S. Mexico border in February of this year, I think. And it was her and her two kids. Her two daughters are 7 and 13. And when I found out that they were there, I just hopped on a quick flight to San Diego, across the border, met them there just to make sure they had like all their shampoo and all their clothes. And so we took them shopping. We bought them some lunch. And I was getting ready to say goodbye because I booked a day flight, like flying from, I think, Casper, Wyoming or something at 6 a.m. to San Diego, and then flying back to Casper that same night. And then I was leaving. The oldest daughter, the one I was telling you about, the one that's named after my grandma, she's got really, I just tell she wanted to say something. You know how kids get when they're like, I really want to say something, but it just makes I'm nervous, or I'm ashamed or whatever. And so she asked if she could talk to me by this other taco stand. I was like, yeah, sure. So we go over there, talk, and she instantly starts to cry. And she's like, thank you so much for buying us food and buying us all these different things. She's like, can I ask you for one more thing? And I was like, sure. What do you need? I need tampons, because my first period hit. They spent all their money to fly from Colombia to Mexico, and their money ran out. And so they had to walk from Mexico City to Tijuana, Mexico, which is a 3-hour flight.
Oh my gosh.
Had to have been like a week walk or something. And her period hit halfway through, and it was her only pair of underwear. And so she had been walking with this for, I don't know how long. And I don't understand how it all, like how, if you don't like constantly change your underwear when that happens, or if you don't have, I don't understand like how complex that can get, but I got a feeling of how complex it could get in that moment. Like that moment was such a defining like experience for me, because I was so, I don't think I've ever been asked something so intimate of another person, where it's like, please, American man, please buy me tampons because I got my period. I don't know how to handle this. I'm a refugee in Mexico. So I told her, I will not get you tampons. You'll take my card. You'll take your mom, and you guys will go buy what you need, including tampons, underwear, whatever. I'm going to sit here with your dad, eat some tacos, but you don't need me being there to pay the bill or to be part of that process. That's a very intimate process. You take it and you do your thing. And they did. They went and got the tampons, the underwear that they needed, and came back, and she got cleaned up and everything was okay. But they waited there as refugees, immigrants, whatever the right terminology is for that situation, political asylees, because they were being persecuted by this police officer that wanted to kill them. They waited there until they were finally allowed entry. And then when they were allowed entry, real life starts, like they came to a safe place. We're helping them get settled. And it's like, okay, you probably need to get a job. You need to look at how to get your driver's license. You need to just do the things that people do day to day. And one of the things was you got to go to school. Kids got to go to school because they've been a year outside of school. And so this girl, she was starting 8th grade, and she asked me to go with on her first day to help meet the people, not meet the people, meet the teachers and all these different things, get her settled, make sure she's
it's scary, especially.
Oh, yeah. And she was terrified. She's in this new place. She's been a refugee for a long time. 8 months ago, she was asking me to buy her underwear and tampons because she got her first period walking in Mexico. And now we're going to school. She's very nervous. She gets to meet teachers. A friend comes over that's going to give her a tour of the school. He kind of gave me like okay, I don't need you anymore. You can go away now. I have a friend. He's going to take me around. I was like, cool, I'll pick you up at 3 and we'll give a debrief of your day. And so I come back and I pick her up at 3, and this girl did not stop talking for probably 40 minutes. I gave her some Starbucks, and we walked to go pick up her little sister. And she just talked about her friends, her classes, her new laptop, her password, what the school smells like, what her gym clothes look like how she got really bad and like the mile run they made her do. And she was so happy about going to school again. And like for me, I was like, this girl who had her normal taken away from her, now she had it back. Now she's obviously like, she started school a few weeks ago. Now she talks about boys and she talks about the teachers that she hates. And she talks about their friends and how some of her friends get like in these petty little fights. And I tell her, I'm like, this is what normal feels like. And right now she can't get enough of normal because normal was taken away from her. And now she has it back, and that she just doesn't want to let go of it. And I don't remember what story you shared that kind of brought this up, but I remember the point I wanted to get to was just how beautiful normal can be, especially when normal has been so removed from someone's life in such a horrific way.
Well, and I mentioned the word hope. If you take hope away from people, I mean, that's despair. That's the opposite of hope. If you don't have hope, you have nothing to look forward to. You feel like you're trapped, that you can't get out of your situation. And that's what I love about you and your organization. I mean, I don't know a lot of people maybe people that work in your field would do this. And I certainly hope so, because they're all heroes in my book. But just, you got a phone call and you went and booked a flight immediately and flew down to San Diego to see what you could do to help these people who are on the other side of the border. That right there is putting yourself in danger simply by going into Mexico. I won't go back to Mexico. They booked Javier and I to speak down there in Mexico City a couple of years ago, and within 3 weeks we were already getting threats, and we never went. Yeah, it was terrible. But and see, that's why I brought you back on the show, because that's what we want to hear about, the success stories that are going on. And I don't want to drag this down, but I do feel obligated to ask the question: do you have stories? And I've got some stories lined out here too I want to ask you about. But are there failure stories?
Yeah. There's definitely failure stories, and I'll share one. It's interesting because like this is actually the experience that put me into therapy, which I actually need to go back to therapy. It's good that we're having this conversation because I talk through things. I'm like, I've never been to therapy in a while. Yeah, it's interesting because there's an experience once where like a failure story. It was in Guatemala. There's a place in Guatemala called La Linea. The Line is what it's called, and have you ever been to Guatemala?
Just to Guatemala City, on a business.
Okay, so in the dark parts of Guatemala City where nobody goes or nobody that wants to feel safe, there's like these tracks that just go on forever. They just go on forever, and they're just old abandoned train tracks. And in these places, there's these little shacks, and in these shacks, there's these women there. There's these kids, there's these women that are just outside. There's just a mattress inside, and they're just waiting for clients to come and pay a couple bucks so that they can get abused. The youngest girl that we saw on this track was probably 12, 13. And then the oldest one were probably in their mid 70s, probably. And for me, that broke my heart as well. Just seeing those women, those are the ones that were never rescued. No one ever came for them. And so I didn't know anything different. And they were taught in their childhood that you're worth whatever a man will pay to rape you. And no one ever came. And so they continued through that way their whole lives. And the whole part of why I was going down there is we were working with a different ministry that was looking to probably 10 women at a time offer them a different life, teach them about how to grow a business, things that are sustainable. Because you can start a business, but if your business is selling beach balls in Cheyenne, Wyoming, you're probably going to go broke.
Right.
But there's businesses that do sell in Guatemala, depending on the market and all these different things. And there, we only had room and funding in our program for probably 10 women at a time. And our first time going to that line and offering these people these different opportunities, you get a lot of people that want out of this life, but there's only room and funding for 10 at a time. We have to do 10 at a time. We work with them for about 4 months, and then we take a little break, and then we bring more in to try to do something similar. And we did this, and we had these 10 women that were there. They were amazing women, and they did a great job. And at the very end of their course, we do this big graduation where we have them dress up, we invite their family members, we give them these plaques, we do all this different food, make them feel just amazingly special, so that more than anything, their kids can see, look at what my mom is accomplishing. Like, mom is no longer working the streets. My mom is no longer doing this thing. Now she's working for a new life. And we were there, we were all celebrating, and everything was one of the most beautiful days of my life. Before that, I met this amazing 14-year-old girl that still told me one of the most profound things I've ever heard in my life. I was asking her, making conversation. I was like, well, what do you think about this whole thing? And she was like, I think it's amazing. This whole experience is just so beautiful. I'm so proud of my mom. And she's very, very Christian. This little girl is. And she asked like the normal question, like, when you get to know a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she was, well, before this all happened with my mom, I wanted to be a taxi driver, like an Uber delivery person, something that I could just use my car to make money. But she's now, I really want to be a Christian singer. And I was like, really? Why a Christian singer? That's an interesting profession. Because after seeing she's like, I remember like sitting in my mom's shack while men would abuse her. I remember sitting there having to watch because my mom didn't have a babysitter. I remember those dark nights. I remember those dark days, and those don't happen anymore. And so I want to be a Christian singer because I want to spend the rest of my life giving thanks to God for what he's done for my mom and making it so those nights no longer happen. Which is still one of the most profound spiritual things that anyone's ever said to me. I'm just like, gosh, like, you're amazing. Like, what? I can't believe you thought about this. It's a beautiful thing to say. Which that happened. And 3 hours later, I'm getting to the where the story goes, but we're in the graduation, and I don't know how it happened, but about 20 of our phones go off at the same time. Like, we start checking our phone, or the ones that check their phones first, they start to scream. And I'm like, what is going on? What happened? And so what happened is that we all got sent this mass text message from a member that we didn't recognize. And one of the girls on the wait list, we got sent a picture of her with her after having been shot in the head and bleeding out on the pavement. And this girl was probably about 14 days from coming into the program and living in a life of freedom. And she was being trafficked by a gang down there in Guatemala. They knew that she was planning on leaving that life and coming into this program. And so what they did is they killed her. And they sent the picture to us as a message about what happens when you try to interfere with their business. And, I'd never seen anything like that. I was maybe 29, 28 years old. I'd never seen a real dead body of someone that I knew. I knew this girl. I knew her really well. I knew how many kids she had. And to see her on the street, dressed as a working girl, as a prostitute, bleeding out, you just, even still, it just ruined the whole graduation, really, because we all knew that girl. We knew that she was 14 days away from having the same experience that they were having with her kids. And now she would never get that. It was a life cut short. And so I went home, and the nightmare started. I couldn't get that image out of my head. I was waking up in a cold sweat and seeing blood and seeing her face. And how I coped with that situation was I self-blamed. I was like, man, if I could have fundraised more, we could have put more girls in this program, and we wouldn't have had to put her on a wait list. If I could have just slept less or whatever, I could have helped grow this program to where this wouldn't have happened, right? Like, you put the self-blame because it gives yourself some kind of control in an uncontrollable situation. But that self-blame, that self-loathing, it followed me for a long time to where I just grew to hate myself. And I was working so much to try to fix something that I really have no control over. And people notice, people that care about you, you don't look so great. You look a little skinny. You look like you haven't slept in a few days. I think you need help. And so I went and got help. I went and got professional help. And Yeah, I just we talked through it to where this therapist told me something very profound when I was going through this experience, because I detailed this whole experience, that just the guilt that I felt this girl was no longer alive because of I feel like something that I had done or didn't do. How dare I rest? How dare I take time off? How dare I not constantly ask for money? Like, how dare I, take time to just be a normal human being? And I kind of still feel that way sometimes. But the therapist, he really spoke a lot of truth into me, where he said, like, this thing that's causing you so much harm, you need to let go of it because it's not real. And you hurting yourself from something that's not real makes no logical sense. You didn't pull the trigger. You have no control over how much money comes in or comes out, or even like how much energy you have as a human being to do this. You have no control over her history of where she was being exploited from or the people that she knew. Like, someone made an action, a violent action that affected you, but it's not your fault. And you need to let this go because it's not real. This guilt that you're trying to feel is because, one, you're a control freak, and that you blaming myself makes me feel as if I had some kind of control in a situation, which made me feel better than the alternative, which we're all just living on this planet and free will is the thing, and people choose certain actions that affect other people. You blaming yourself, you had no control over the situation. You did all you could. You weren't even there when it happened. So you hurting yourself because of this is not real.
Right.
Which is true. I believe all that's still true to this day. Now, does it make me feel better that this girl is no longer alive? Yeah, kind of. But it was a failure that led to a lot of personal growth for me. But it was, I mean, this is a girl that we didn't save. Always is a girl that we couldn't get to in time. And there's other stories like that, where there's a case in Arizona right now of an MMA fighter who abused a lot of girls, published it on Pornhub. There's a case down there in Miami of a pharmacist did the same kind of thing. And there's little girls in these cases that we haven't found yet. And so you just wonder if we ever find them, can we find them? And what does their life look like when we do find them? And those cases that we have that are good cases, we celebrate, but it's those ones that we don't always catch, or we don't always are able to support, that really just keep you up at night every once in a while.
Yeah, I think what they call it is survivor's guilt. And I think it's very prevalent in high risk occupations where someone else gets hurt. 1989, my partner got shot, and I was right beside him when he got hit. And I went through a couple of weeks of not PTSD, but I was shell shocked. Loud noises would startle me. And my wife recognized it, and she startled me a lot. But she was teaching me it's okay.
Yeah.
But you're always saying, why couldn't that have been me? Why did I not get shot, but he did? And I've talked to a lot of military guys that have gone through that as well as law enforcement and any high risk position. But here's the smart thing you did is you listened to somebody when they told you needed help, that you needed somebody to talk to. I didn't, which I think probably led to having the shell shock. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a persona or a psyche type thing, and it went away. And what that led to later in my career is, and I'm pretty sure it'll be the same with you, as you see people that you work with that are struggling, you think you'll be the one to go talk to them about getting some help?
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, you give a voice to that. And for me, it was really hard. I imagine that your audience, it's really hard too, because you gotta get this attitude of like, I'm strong enough to handle this. I'm 6'2", I'm 240 pounds. I'm strong enough to handle this. I can deal with this. But healing the body is one thing, but healing the mind, healing the soul is a whole different thing.
Absolutely.
And it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to. I got told there was by someone that was, I don't think if you get help, I don't know how much longer I have with you, because you're just worrying me. Your health isn't good. I don't know, like if you take a gun and you eat your gun or whatever. But this person, it was very kind. She was like, I need another 40 years with you. I want to be your friend for a long time. Please get help, because what I'm seeing here is affecting me. And that's where it hit me too. I was like, me not getting help is affecting the people that I love. And I don't want that. And so that was, if it was just for me, I don't know if I would have actually gotten the help that I needed. But because it was affecting people that I cared about, and they told me that, that's what really, like, you swallow your pride and you use all the strength that you have, which is probably the most brave and the strongest and the hardest thing I've ever done, which is to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, I'm not Superman. I'm not Captain America. I'm just Tyler, and I need help.
Yeah.
And if I don't get help, like, like who knows what happens.
So, and think of the strength that it took this girl to tell you that. You guys are obviously very close, and she's telling you, if you don't get help, we're not going to be friends anymore because I don't want to see you die. That's what she's saying without saying it.
Yep.
And this is a good place to put in here. And everybody, you've heard me bring this up on a lot of our shows. Here in the United States, we have a national suicide and crisis lifeline. It's 988. That's all you got to do. You got to dial 988, or you can text 988. It's manned 24/7, 365. There are professionals on the line that if they can't help you, they're going to put you in contact with somebody that can help you, and it will be almost immediately. There's absolutely no reason for any of us to go through any of this alone. It's people are out there waiting to help us. So please, if you need help, if you just need somebody to talk to, 988, that's it. Call it, text it. You can remain anonymous. It's up to you what you do with it, but you don't be afraid to take that first step. And don't think it's going to put a stigma on you, which, I was worried about. This is the reason I didn't go to counseling, because I don't want everybody to know that I went to a counselor. Of course, this was 30 plus years ago. We all need help at one point or another. I'm fortunate enough that my wife she will be very blunt with me when when she needs to be, and when I need to hear it. So, but anyway, 988, text or call. Please don't hesitate. Wow. Those stories, I'm just thinking, I've heard of Christian groups who would go to foreign countries like Peru and Central America and South America and offer up basically what you're talking about, a little micro loan for these people to get started. And a micro loan could be what, $20?
Yeah, in some cases, yeah. Like at Libertas, we kind of give, we call them, we don't have like another word to call it, so we call it microloans too, but we don't expect repayment.
Right.
And we give a budget of like $5,000. It's about the most that we give. And it's like, with this, you get to start your own business. You and you have to repay there's no debt to repay. There's no interest. You don't have to do anything. And
it's a grant.
Yeah, it's a grant. Yeah, it's a grant essentially. And we've seen cool things with it. You talk about like freeing somebody. We talk a lot in the anti-human trafficking world, like rescue and recovery and all these different things. And in my experience, the survivor of human trafficking is truly rescued when they're financially stable on their own. When they're making money in the way it's dignified, in the way it's theirs, in a way that they make enough money and they're proud of it. That's when someone is truly, truly freed. I think like we did today, we had this amazing Venezuelan girl who, she did not want to start her own business, but she wanted help with her resume. And so with that part of the organization, we help with that as well. And we don't have to give her like a small business loan or anything, but we give her some talents that she can work if she wants to in other places, like a place like in a salon or with nails or something. But we helped her with her resume and kind of put what her salary requirements were, what she was looking to make, and what her skills were. And she actually yesterday got a job at like the Colombian version of Home Depot. I don't know what it's called, but today I sent us a picture, and she's like on that little truck where she pulls a lever, it goes up, and you can get something from the top shelf, bring it down, and give it to client. Yeah, like the truck that goes up and down. Yeah. And for us, I remember when that girl just first came to us, she was abused by an American guy from Miami named Abel Fernandez, who's now dead. And she was just little. She was only 14 years old and extremely vulnerable as an immigrant from Venezuela living in Colombia. And now she's working at Home Depot. She makes her own money, and she's just killing it. And so we always look to do that ourselves or partner with groups like this Christian group in Guatemala that invests a lot in the microloans and the grants, so that these women can do something else that's more dignifying, that's safer, and that they can be proud of.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I didn't know you were involved in that. Yeah. I learned all kinds of new things about you. I just want to throw out a couple stats here for our listeners. And I took this off your web. I'm actually looking at your website right now. So on the Libertas website, and you can learn so much just by going and checking this out. Don't expect us in an hour or two to teach everything you need to know about anti-human trafficking. You got to do a little research on your own, which is like anything else. When you do it yourself, it means something to you. If somebody gives you things, it's not that big a deal. I mean, you're gracious about that they do, but when you earn it yourself, it means a whole lot more to us, right? It does for me. But it's estimated that more than 40 million victims are trapped in human trafficking in the world today. That business generates more than $150 billion, not million, billion dollars annually. Here's one for us to be proud of, because here in the United States, we're the leading consumer country of illegal narcotics out of the entire world, something that is a horrible reputation to have. Well, listen to this one. The USA leads all other nations in consumption. Trafficking has been recorded in all 50 states. We've got more perverts in our country than any other country in the world. Are we proud of that? My gosh, it's a couple more stats. 1 in 4 victims is a child. 25% of human trafficking victims are children. Yet the fact that that young girl you're talking about is 13 years old and she's ready to have her first baby reminds me of that guy we took out, Pablo Escobar. His wife, I read her book. She had an abortion when she was 13 years old because he got her pregnant when she was 12, and he was in his mid-20s. I mean, there's perverts everywhere. And then 7 in 10 victims are female. 70% of the victims are female. You know, and I want to get to more stories, and we'll probably do that in the second half, but I want to ask this question. And I try not to get political here, but I got to know, is Congress doing anything to combat this? I'm talking about Congress because I know you work with HSI. They're very active. The gentleman I talked to that I told you I met last night, he told me about how HSI is phenomenal to work with. But for our Congress, are you getting any support from them?
We don't personally. I think Libertas may be like a little under their radar when it comes to nonprofit wise. There's a lot of big nonprofits doing some really good work. One of them is the National. I always get their name wrong. The National Center for Combating Sexual Exploitation, and they work a lot on the legal side, helping Congress kind of understand why these laws are important. It's very bureaucratic. It got a lot of bureaucracy, so I don't know if a law gets done. Every once in a while, there are things that get done. Like there's a law that just passed, I believe, that prevents AI companies or prevents people from using AI to create like-minded abuse images from people, kids, ex-girlfriends, whatever, because there's a weird part in the law where it's like, well, this picture is AI generated. I'm not taking actual pictures of her. This was AI generated. Yeah, it kind of looks like her, but I'm really not doing anything wrong because she's an adult, and this picture I had is an adult, and AI is getting every week. It just looks a little bit better than it did the last week before, to where I think 20 years from now, like our court system are going to be just insane, to where people are going to accuse somebody of murder and have a AI generated video that looks exactly like this, like it happened, but it's not real. I think what's coming is exciting in the field of AI, but also very terrifying. But we're hoping for some change. We're hoping for some improvement, and we're hoping that there's a little less bureaucracy, there's a little more collaboration. And I think it seems like because our political environment is so heated right now, that even if like we can't even agree, like maybe the sky is blue. If one side says blue, the other side has to say, well, technically it's celeste or whatever. They just fight. But there's things that can be addressed, I think, to really to help make human trafficking less of a problem here in the States. Because like you said, I have a lot of love for the United States, especially like after talking with these people that have been victimized. Like the story I talked about with the girl on the border. Like now in the United States, she gets to feel safe. She's not persecuted by a police officer. If a police officer goes after somebody here, the government goes after the police officer. They protect that victim.
Right.
You're able to work freely without someone extorting you for the most part. And just the whole experience of seeing these people, a lot of our girls that have fled this violence across Latin America or even Europe and places, to come here and to feel safe, like, just give me a lot of love for how lucky we are to live here and what an amazing place the United States is. But it's not perfect. Like you said, we have those consumers. Like I was watching Law and Order the other night, and someone used the term because they found in this case they found a sex tourist in Cuba that was abusing kids in Cuba, and the main guy, Ice-T, he was like, sometimes I wonder if the United States is the land of the free and home of the sick bastards, and if we should actually build a wall to keep our people in, because sometimes they create problems across the world. And but I'd like to see more, more involvement in Congress on like the following things. I'd like to see just the border. I know it's a thing that people talk about a lot with the border, where there's just it's really hard for people that want to come in legally to get in. There's a lot of holes to where a lot of traffickers like bring people in, bring drugs in. I'd love to see just more involvement there, just to make it for people that are really seeking safety, to make it easier for them, to create a more trauma sensitive environment there, and to hold these people accountable that use the border as a way to transport drugs and people. And And then invest a lot in prevention, where it's like, well, why are so many drugs and people coming to the States? What does our people have besides money? What kind of addiction can we work on to solve this, to where people aren't doing this? And like, I don't know what that looks like with schools or with Congress or anything like that, but I think that's one thing that needs to be a focus for the next 4 years, as far as like Congress's efforts to fight trafficking. I think that the image-based stuff is really important, to where even now at Libertas, we have, I think, 14 survivors now that are actively suing companies like Pornhub, or X videos, or like these porn companies that just can publish whatever they want. And there's really no consequences. There's no verification if this girl's a minor or if they were coerced into this. I'd love to see just more empowerment on that end, to where these survivors are given laws to go after these companies if they're profiting off of their abuse. And then I'd love to just see more resources for survivors, where it's let's say an American survivor that's trafficked here in the United States wants access to some kind of federal funding to go to college or to start a business or contribute some way to the American economy, to not make it so hard to get access to that funding. Because I have an amazing girl that I've been working with for like 10 years who, there's this new law. It's if you're a victim of child pornography, child sexual abuse material, you actually have access $30,000 to invest in a small business and all these different things. And she's an esthetician. She wants to start her own little business working on people's skin and teaching people safe touch. And she wants to use that money to fund it, but that money is really hard to get access to. So you have to jump through all these hoops and interview and all these different things. And at the end, they can still deny you. I'd love to make it easier. Just make the system, I think this is probably a complaint for so many different people too, of make the system just a little bit easier to understand.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I mean, this translates into all the way up to major corporations. It's called due diligence. To have an organization, there's tons of companies out there. I'm sure they cost a fortune, but with all the other money that we just seem to waste on pet peeve projects from one individual congressperson, it seems like the government could find some funding to pay for due diligence to check these people out and see if it's legitimate. And talking about the border, I am staying away from politics on that. However, I will say this, and I usually don't, but this is one of the most important topics we talk about is what you're doing. Just like you mentioned, that lady and her two daughters were able to make it to the border and then file for asylum in the United States because they had legitimate reason to do so. Our laws are in place, everybody. That's what I'm getting to here. Let's just go with the laws we have. My two daughters immigrated to the United States as Colombian citizens. They are now U.S. citizens. There's absolutely nothing special about me. Just because I was a U.S. employee at the embassy in Bogota, you think I got any special treatment? Absolutely not. The law is the law. But instead of creating all these new regulations for everybody to follow, let's just go with what we have now. Let's see how that works. Because I think we've gotten so far away from that. And the other thing, these are like little soapbox issues for me to get up and pontificate about, Tyler. I don't know. And you know what? I'm just going to stop there because I'll keep going. This is about your story. It's not about Murph's feelings here. I got a Patreon channel where I can do all that if that's what I want to do.
Yeah. No, and I think you're on it though. I think the border, like it affects so many people, and it affected our girls too. Like they waited there for a long time and did everything right, but they still waited a long time. And Libertas had to give a lot of resources to make sure that they were okay. And the process needs to be a little bit quicker. There's so many different aspects of this that gets so complicated too with like the border. Like from what I'm hearing on the ground right now, actually, is it's the people that are smuggling people to the border, the ones that are crossing illegally, they're making a lot of money ever since Trump won the election because they're preaching a sense of urgency to these people trying to get to the border, to where they're really just they're extorting these poor families like trying to get to the border. And then just because the border issue because it hasn't been fixed. And from what I've understood, people like talking with different politicians, is that no one wants to take a lot of responsibility for the border because it's such a nice political weapon to use on the other side when your side is not winning. But this guy was telling me this, I won't use his name because I don't have his permission to do so. He was like, there was a girl that was at the border when she finally got to the port of entry that came in. They did a medical check on her, 8 years old, little girl from El Salvador. And she had something like 42 different strands of DNA in her when they completed her medical check. he was like, I've met that girl. I've heard a portion of her story. It is horrific. And it happened because no one wants to take responsibility for our border as it currently stands. And that you bring it down from like the border, the politics, the left, the right, United States, you bring it down to like a very micro level to this little girl and how she was affected by that policy. Like, I hope that it gets fixed. I hope that people take it seriously. And I hope that people utilize those laws, like you said, so that we can keep the bad guys out and the people that are legitimately seeking the safety, the healing, and the blessing that is the United States of America, that they have access to a portion of that American dream.
Very good. Tyler, we've been going, believe it or not, we've been going over an hour now.
Nice.
I love talking to you, man.
Yeah,
and yeah, for our listeners, Tyler and I talked for quite a while before we ever started recording today's episode. So it was a little catch up for us. Look at this guy like he's my own son. I'm so proud of what he's doing here to help other people. So we're going to take a little break here. Join us tomorrow when the next episode with Tyler here, where you're going to hear some more stories, things that will just break your heart. But it's things that we need to know now, things that we need to be aware of, and things that we can potentially become involved with to help other people. There's no saying, to those who much is given, much is expected. Well, I can't think of a better cause than what we're talking about today. So join us tomorrow to help us continue playing the biggest, baddest, most dangerous game of all. You know, it's the game of crimes.
Game of crimes.
We'll see y'all tomorrow. Hey, players, that's the end of part 1. Part 2 comes out, as always, on Tuesday. In the meantime, just a reminder that Game of Crimes is now posting interview videos on YouTube. You can find those at Game of Crimes Podcast. Our website is gameofcrimespodcast.com, where you'll find all our episodes, our guests' book lists, merchandise, and more. And for more content, join us on patreon.com/gameofcrimes. I have several monthly episodes that range from silly to serious, so come on over and join the fun. In the meantime, everyone stay safe. I'll see you tomorrow for part 2.